Good afternoon, everybody, from blazing hot Buriram. Lewis Suddaby and Jack Appleyard are with you from what is a relatively quiet pit lane at the moment here at the Chang International Circuit. A few teams returning from their lunch, and we're going to bring you up to speed on what we've seen so far today at the start of the final test, penultimate day of pre-season testing in 2026. A morning which I guess has been headlined by the factory Ducati team. We spoke about them a lot over the course of the Sepang test, the decisions they were trying to make in terms of aero. Pecco Bagnaia quickest when we went off for lunch, but his world champion teammate Marc Marquez had an eventful morning, to put it mildly.
Yeah, he did indeed. Not the ideal start to this final pre-season test for Marc Marquez. A crash on his opening flying lap of the day in tricky conditions, it has to be said. Of course, the last time we came here over 12 months ago, the track a little bit dirty. It needed rubbering in the first hour, 2 hours of running, which means that we didn't see too many electric lap times. Marc crashing down at the final corner when following Maverick Vinales. There's a video of it up on our social media, and you can see Marc when he came back into the box and was speaking to rider coach and analyst Manu Poggiali, and the fact that he was out on the white line, which was a little bit slick. The front went without much warning. And then the second one, he very nearly saved it. It was very nearly a Marc Marquez style super save, where he was digging the elbow, he was digging the knee in just over our right hand shoulders here at turn 5, but the front end eventually letting go there as well. So yeah, not a particularly productive start to this Buriram test for Marc Marquez, but there's still plenty of time for him to go. As you can see, it's going to be a busy afternoon as the Ducati squad warm up both bikes, and one of the major talking points from the Sepang test was the fact that Marc hasn't made a decision on, the Ducati team haven't made a decision on aero yet. This is quite interesting in particular, because you can see here, this is the 2024 aerodynamics package that Marc is using in comparison to, which has been running all morning, the 2025 aero, which you can see here, the lip that sort of goes down on that wing, indicating that that is the 2025 package. A slightly bigger side pods here as well, indicating that that's the 2025, compared to, which we can see here for the first time, Marc going back to the 2024 one on one of the bikes here with a smaller side pod and the front wings which are slightly redesigned as well. So that goes to show the decisions that Marc is still having to go through this afternoon and into tomorrow as well. That aligns with what we've seen from Pecco Bagnaia and Fabio Di Antonio, where the pair of them sticking with the 2024 aero package, which they used throughout the duration, or the vast majority anyway, of last season. Alex Marquez as well, sticking with the 24 package that he of course knows so well from last year. He's up in the second in the championship. It seems as though the captaincy potentially leaning in the favour of sticking with what they know, which was the exact same situation that they found themselves in 12 months ago.
Yeah, Pecco Bagnaia has also been out there on the 2026 sort of side wings that they've been trying to test out over the course of the day. So they are still trying to piece this puzzle together down at Ducati as they try and improve upon perfection, which we, after last year, they didn't really achieve. We're now down at Pramac Yamaha. These are Jack Miller's bikes. Just over to our left, you can spot Jack Miller's because they don't have the wings on the seat unit. Toprak Razgatlioglu not running those because it makes the bike too tall in order for him to satisfy the regulations. It's been I guess a productive morning for Yamaha. Of course, the headlines that they made from the Sepang test were more due to their lack of running than their actual running, and I guess we're getting more rather cold, hard reality of just how steep a hill Yamaha have got to climb with their new V4 powered machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And unlike the other 4 manufacturers, as I guess you would expect, given the infancy of this project, Yamaha are still chucking big items at all 4 riders. Jack Miller here in particular, sampling 2 different aero packages. You can see on both of the bikes, the swing arm is slightly different on this one on the left-hand side in comparison to the one on the right. We've seen Fabio Quartararo with a couple of different chassis there as well. It's obvious, as you would expect really, that Yamaha have not really settled on any kind of direction on the vast majority of the major items. So it's going to go right down to the final hour for Yamaha to try and find some kind of a direction to take them into the season. Whereas for the other 4 manufacturers, Ducati aside and still playing with aero, but Aprilia are settled, KTM look pretty settled, and Honda were settled pretty much from day one in Sepang. That's continued through to here as well. A different story down at Yamaha, but I think that's going to be the case all the way up to probably the summer break.
Yeah, we are going to welcome in our guest now, who's going to join us to talk about the Buriram test. He's a little busy at the moment. Shouldn't you be busy, Jack? Always busy. He's been chatting to Maio Meregalli. Maio, thanks very much for joining us.
I'll let you go in the middle, Maio.
Stand in the middle, Maio. Thanks for joining us.
I'm scared to be in the middle.
You should be. You should be. He's more the danger more than me. But in terms of this test, then let's focus on what's happening here rather than what happened at Sepang, because that's well documented. I guess what you really need here over these 2 days is laps and plenty of them.
Yeah, here what we are focused for the most is to try start working with setups, because until now we did many comparison, because for us the priority were to choose the right chassis, the best aerodynamics, but we never working really on the setups. And here today was the last day where we could keep playing a bit with different material, but from tomorrow for sure we have to work on setups. The race is in a few days, and we really now missing the setup.
We know from the sheer scale of the work on the V4 that it was going to be a season which would perhaps start a little poorly but gradually get better. But has the scale of the challenge been even greater than even you guys expected?
Yeah, we know that it was going to be a big change. I think it's part of the process now. We are really knowing the bike, because even if last year we could do tests, but it's one thing to do tests with the testing team, but then when you move everything to the factory team, the rider are always pushing more. They need something special for them. And here also what we had in Sepang, anyway, just discovering the bike, discovering unfortunately also some problems that sometimes you can expect, other time no. But as we already said many times here, it's really a learning process.
We can see, as you've mentioned, still some comparisons going on today. When we get to round one on Friday, do you think we'll have 4 Yamahas exactly the same, or do you anticipate that there will still be some differences between the bikes?
No, they will be the same. From tomorrow also the Pramac will use the same aerodynamics. Now it's a bit matter of parts. We are receiving all the parts in these coming days for the race weekend, but the most of the, let's say, fundamental items has been chosen in Sepang. So here it's just a matter of define the last things, but then as I said before, we really need to start moving by the bike to understand what the changing does, and unfortunately, even if we did additional test days in Sepang due to the congestion, but everything is still too new.
When we spoke to the factory squad at the end of the Sepang test, they were hopeful that a new engine update may arrive in time for here. Have you managed to bring a further update on the V4 engine, or is that going to come later into the season?
No, it's later in the season. They already scheduled by when we should receive. Then it depends if things goes smooth without problems. But what we evaluated and confirmed in Sepang, it's the material with which we will start the season.
We've also seen on social media some images of Fabio Quartararo through the morning, and the frustration was obvious, giving the middle finger to the bike and head in his hands in the garage. Has it been a tough start for Fabio?
As I said before, the rider cannot wait. But we know, we knew since the beginning that we couldn't expect magician and magic.
Magic, yeah.
We since the beginning, we were aware that especially the beginning for us was going to be a really learning process. And then what I want to believe, and I'm still thinking that from the second part of the season, gradually we will improve the performance and according to the results.
And just finally, we know there was some understandable caution about turning the engine all the way up to maximum power because of the fear of some unreliability early on. Did what happened at Sepang change your approach going forward anyway? Has that brought some extra caution, or are you still trying to follow the same plan that you already had?
The problem we had in Sepang was a completely unknown problem, and since we had the same issue in a short period, then all the engineers decided to stop riding because they really wanted to understand. Luckily, there was a common part. So then they could understand during the night between Japan and Italy, and then we could continue the test. So that is not stopping or slowing the process to develop the engine.
Well, thanks very much for joining us. We've got a lot of work to do, so we'll let you get back to work. Maio, thanks for joining us. Hi, Meregalli joining us live on the Midday Live. He's going to go back to work, and as are we. And it has to be said, Jack, it's not something that any Fabio Quartararo, Toprak Razgatlioglu, Jack Miller or Alex Rins fans are going to want to hear, but everything we've seen so far would seem to indicate that for the first 3, 4, maybe 5 Grand Prix, we could well see a back of the grid heavily populated by Yamahas.
Yeah, absolutely. They're playing catch-up. We knew that was going to be the case. It's going to be slow progress. The engine hasn't got anywhere near enough power for them to be competitive. If you haven't seen those images that we've spoken about with Maio there, just go onto MotoGP's Instagram and you'll see the obvious, the evident frustration that Fabio Quartararo has got with where the Yamaha is at right now. And it's not out of the question to say that last year, even with the obvious deficiencies that the Yamaha had, Fabio Quartararo was able to do something special in qualifying, was able to do special things in the races from time to time. But you're looking at the start of the season and it's a genuine question, when's the first chance for your Yamaha to get into Q2? And that is a realistic target and would be deemed a success if they can get into Q2 in those opening 3 or 4 rounds of the year, because right now they're a long way off.
As you can see, Marc Marquez is back in the Ducati box, ready to get his afternoon underway. And as Jack illustrated earlier on, you can see the different aero configurations on his 2 Ducatis. Let's move to the 3 other manufacturers then that we haven't really discussed so far. And let's start with Aprilia. Jorge Martin, second quickest this morning. We've already heard or spoken to Marco Bezzecchi. You'll hear that interview after the flag later on. The 2 Aprilia riders, though, in the factory team on very different programs this morning.
They are, but both equally impressive. Marco Bezzecchi, we had the chance to speak to around half an hour ago, despite a very slow, very silly crash, as he described it, at turn 3 when he was on an in-lap coming back into the box. Competitive. The bike looks settled. They've made big updates and developments on the aerodynamics package, as well as with the swing arm, as we saw in Sepang and Aprilia. You have a real sense that there is a quiet calm there, a real quiet confidence, and Bez looks ready to go. If we have to race tomorrow, he'd be happy, and you've got to give huge credit to Jorge Martin, jumping on the bike for the very first time as a fully fit rider since, well, God knows, maybe Valencia 2024.
First time he's ridden the Aprilia here.
First time ever that he's ridden the Aprilia here. First time that he's been close to 100% fitness, maybe since sort of the Friday of Japan, potentially even Valencia 2024, and to be up there. And the lap times are not going to be the sort of lap times we're seeing qualifying in exactly 7 days' time. However, fair play to Jorge Martin, and that is a real indicator to Aprilia and to the rivals of, okay, Aprilia are putting together a package that can rival these guys at Ducati in this coming season.
Yeah, Aprilia look very, very serious. Marc Marquez then ready to get his afternoon underway. Some very used tyres on board this factory Ducati as the reigning world champion now climbs aboard. 2 crashes for him earlier on today. We're certainly hoping that this afternoon sees no repeat of that. The world champion out on circuit then. Live timing, and of course our live blog continues on MotoGP.com right now. Two more manufacturers to cover then. Let's quickly run through them. Honda have caught the eye again this morning. Luca Marini also quick earlier on today. Joan Mir will be joining us live and after the flag later on today. But once again, more green shoots for Honda.
Yeah, absolutely. The confidence down there can be illustrated by the fact of Luca Marini going out and doing the opening morning in tricky conditions, as we've mentioned, but still putting a very competitive lap time. Was top of the timesheets for around half an hour. And then he took his levers off and he sort of had an hour off and an hour of relaxing, which really does show you and goes a long way of illustrating the fact that Honda feel prepared. They feel ready. They're just like Aprilia. They can go racing tomorrow and they know exactly the package that they've got. So, yeah, reason to be optimistic down at Honda. Reason to be optimistic if you're Joan Mir and Luca Marini. Interesting looking at one of the rookies we touched on, Toprak Razgatlioglu down at Yamaha. Diogo Moreira, of course, his adaptation is continuing, and I thought it was interesting this morning that his fuel tank looked very, very different to the other riders. A lot of sort of ergonomic work has gone into trying to get Moreira as comfortable as possible, trying to adapt his braking style to these MotoGP bikes. We often find it's so difficult to position your body, to get the body weight into the correct position to be able to maximise that braking phase, and it seems a lot of the work on the full tank has gone into sort of locking in his thighs under the fuel tank so he can really extend the arms and use a full brunt of his body weight to get the bike stopped. That is one of the most crucial parts, and here in particular the Buriram circuit has got so many heavy straight up braking zones. If you can't get that right, you're going to lose a whole chunk of lap time. So that's where the key work is going into for the Brazilian at the moment.
And finally for KTM, Pedro Acosta, he was the first rider into the 129s earlier on today. Lap record's in the 28s though, so we're expecting the lap time to drop a lot more as we go through the next 25, 26 hours or so. Much more settled down at KTM in this second test as they try to zero in on the package they're going to start the season with. Brad Binder's looking for some single lap performance. And I think tomorrow we're going to learn an awful lot about KTM because Pedro Acosta has earmarked this test as key to identify whether they've got to the bottom of their old tyre woes of last year.
Yeah, as we get to 3 o'clock local time, or just gone 3 o'clock local time here, it's an ambient air temperature of around 35, 36 degrees. The track temperature without a single cloud in the sky is going to be scorching. It is going to be upwards of 60 degrees, which means with so many stop and go corners where you are burning the centre of the tyre life is so pivotal here. And we saw 12 months ago the nightmares that KTM were having. They could not get a tyre to the end of a sprint simulation without it just eating through Michelin rubber. So once they start to go out and string together 12, 13, 14, 15 laps, we'll see just how the changes that they made over the past 12 months are helping, if at all, with that tyre life. That is the big question for KTM. Have they managed to solve their Achilles heel, which stopped Pedro from fighting for victory on a number of occasions in the latter half of last year?
Yeah, we're going to be watching very closely to see what the drop-off is in his lap times from the start of the run to the end of the run because it was simply too high last year. Right, well, we're going to head in for some much-needed air conditioning in the media centre upstairs. We're back on air 5:30 local time, so in just over 2 hours or so from now. After the flag, myself, Jack Appleyard and Elliot York will be with you up in the studio. Jack will also be patrolling pit lane to bring you all the latest stories from here on the ground. As mentioned, we will be joined at some stage in the studio by the 2020 World Champion HRC Honda Castrol's Joan Mir, and we'll bring you all the very latest reaction and analysis from here and also from back at HQ in Barcelona. So make sure you join us 5:30 p.m. local time after the flag, the full story from day one here in Buriram.